Hi, I'm FIDE Master Livy Cherbulenko, and in this series I explore the typical mistakes of people rated anywhere between 1000 and 2000. This is a first reaction, no engine analysis of a chess.com game played between 1604 and 1659. Let's start. Let's see, so it was e4, e6, so black wanna play the French defense, right, with d5, c3, you know, it's weird. Usually the common move is like d4 and then black goes like d5, and then white has a couple of options. He can either take the exchange variation, or white can push, gain more space, which is the advanced or the closed variation. There's also knight c3, which is like the main variation, defending the pawn. If white takes, if black takes, white just takes back. There's also knight d2, the Tarrasch variation with a point, but if black goes bishop b4 pinning the knight, white can just go c3. Whereas like after knight c3, if bishop b4, white cannot really push c3, and like sometimes black can like take the knight and damage white's pawn structure. So these are usually the common options, but c3 is quite weird, so should be inaccurate. Okay, so black continues with his normal plan, d5 makes sense, e5. Interesting. So I mean, if white plays d4 next, which is transposed to the normal closed or advanced variation of French defense, usually in these kind of positions, it's very like key to play c5 because white's gonna go d4 anyway, and we need to pressure d4, because otherwise, if we play like some passive moves like c6 or you know like knight d7 or b6 or something, or like bishop e7, or then white has this like pawn dominating pawn on e5, then white's gonna go d4, then bishop d3, attacking h7. Let's say we castle kingside, and then we'll just like checkmate us on the king side. So that's why we need to, usually the best like counterplay is counterplay in the center. So they attack us on the side, we need to counterattack the center, the e5 pawn, the d4 pawn, right? The e5 pawn is guarded by the d4, will be guarded by the d4 pawn, so that's why we should put pressure on the d4 pawn. So that's why c5 is very typical. But let's see. So yeah, black played c5. Also, by the way, as a bonus, c5 opens up a queen, so the queen will later on go through b6, putting pressure both on d4 pawn and on the b2 pawn. Yeah, so b6 is like an ideal square for the queen. But let's see, d3. Yeah, d3 is actually an interesting move. Now, why didn't white play d4? Because it looks so logical, right? Why not play d4 and guard the pawn? And d4 would be fine, because like I said, this is like the closed variation by transposition. It is fine, but d3 also has a point, and the point is that although d4 would have defended the pawn on e5, but it is a potential weakness. For example, black can play like knight e6, knight f3, queen b6, and then let's say white makes some whatever move, then black can eventually take on d4, and white will have his fixed pawn on d4, fixed weakness. But black later on can attack with like knight e7, knight f5, right? And he'll have like three pieces, knight on f5, knight on c6, queen on b6. It's like a forever target. Or if we go to an endgame, d4 will always be a fixed target for black. So that's like the dangerous thing about the d4 move, is that once you play d4, you cannot go back, and it's a forever target for black. So that's why white played d3. White's point is that his strength lies not in the d4 pawn, but in the e5 pawn. And so if he can guard the e5 pawn without playing d4, that might be even better for white. Because again, the strength is not in the d4 pawn. It's like sometimes a necessity to defend the e5 pawn, but the strength is in the e5 pawn. Why? Because again, if you cut the board in two, right, in half, the e5 pawn is in our half of the board, in black's half of the board, which means white dominates, which means white has more space. And in the future, they can like attack our king. And what's key is that we can never play knight f6 with a pawn on e5. And if we cannot play knight f6, it means h7 will be very weak, which like f7 and h7 are usually the weakest link in chess, weakest links. And so if we cannot play knight f6, which is our main defender of the king side, white will attack our h7 pawn. So that's why e5 is the key pawn, yeah, not the d4 pawn. So if white can play e5, but without creating potentially a weak pawn on d4, and like defending with like minor pieces, that may be even better for white actually. So that actually might be the point behind c3 instead of d4 at the move second. Yeah, but still c3 is not the main move. Plus here white could have Not sure about d4. I mean, black would have maybe played d4 versus queen a4 check, attacking the king and the pawn, but then black can play knight c6, then white can play bishop b5. It's a bit complicated. So yeah, c5 is fine. Okay, let's see, d3, knight c6 attacking the pawn, knight f3, makes sense. Queen b6. Queen b6 makes sense when the pawn is on d4, right? Because then we put pressure on both d4 and b2, and the point is that white cannot play bishop e3 to guard d4 because we lose b2. Here, there is no need for white to play bishop e3. So the queen, I mean, b2 is well guarded, and the queen doesn't attack anything on d4. There is nothing on d4, so there is no reason for white to play bishop e3. So I'm not sure what do we attack here. I'm not sure, but this is like the most important move here. So let's go back. Let's see what else white and black could have done. I mean, queen c7, I guess, is one idea. Putting pressure on the pawn. See, on b6 we attack no one. On c7 we attack a real and actual target. The problem is it's quite easy to defend it, I guess, with like bishop f4. Although bishop f4, the bishop is loose, yeah. So now I have a couple of interesting ideas. One potentially might be like f6, yeah, and now I cannot take because we lose a bishop, yeah. So this is like an interesting idea. This is like a loose piece. White has to play like queen e2, let's say, but it's not ideal for white to play queen e2 because it blocks the bishop. Now we cannot develop properly the bishop, so it's not ideal to put the queen on e2 right now. You know, it would be ideal if the bishop was on d3 and then the queen on e2 behind the bishop, but that's not possible. The pawn should have been on d4. So queen e2, and maybe now still white has good development. Even this is, I'm not so sure about this for black. I don't really like this for black, because like next move white can play like bishop g3 and then ef is a real threat, and I don't really want to take on e5 because then white like takes with a knight and activates his knight. So still I think white has the advantage. So maybe not f6, maybe knight e7 with the idea of knight g6 attacking the bishop and the pawn. That might make sense. If they make some random move, let's say knight bd2, yeah, well, like just knight g6 attacking the bishop, bishop g3. I'm not sure that we can take on e5, because if we take something like d4, and the knight's pinned, yeah, but maybe we can just like develop like bishop e7, just like develop. And then potentially there's also this idea, maybe h5, h4, if they allow us. We might even try to castle queen side, play like b6, oops, play b6, bishop b7, long castle. Yeah, why not? So it's pretty interesting. Yeah, queen c7. Another move would be maybe to play immediately f6, get rid of this pawn immediately. This might be maybe even the best, perhaps. f6, now if they take, we just take, let's say, with a knight, and next we play like bishop d6, short castle, and we have good development. Potentially we might even maybe go for like e5. Well, it depends on the situation. But we have good development. We got rid of this key pawn, and now we can put the knight on f6, which is absolutely key. If you can put the knight on f6, h7 potentially might be weak. But yeah, we just play f6, knight f6, and black should be fine here. If they don't take, if bishop f4, maybe we can just take. Maybe like just take, and like either take on knight f6, and then like bishop d6 should be fine, or maybe even just like knight f6, and we take, and then like bishop d6 also should be fine. Yeah, and then exchange the bishops and then push like e5, and we have like a strong pawn center. Or like I said, like just take first, and then knight f6 followed by bishop d6 also should be fine. Though again, I think still with small advantage for white. White has a small advantage simply due to the fact that white has this dominating pawn, which is in our half of the board. But let's see, so queen b6, black chose. Not so sure about it, but okay, not the worst. The plus is, I guess, now white cannot move his bishop. At least not right now, so I guess that's one plus. But let's see. So bishop e2, okay, so white simply continues the development. Bishop d7, So yes, black won a castle queen side, yeah? Interesting. Well, that does make some sense. Let's see, a short castle. 97, so black does not decide yet where to put his king. Black waits for white to see how white plays, and then decide, depending on the situation, whether it's better to castle king side or queen side. That makes sense, I guess. 97, alright. Rook e1. Yeah, makes sense. White activates the rook, overprotecting potentially the e5 pawn. When you have like important pawns, you wanna overprotect important pawns, pieces, squares. Yeah, overprotection. Okay, knight g6 makes sense, attacking the pawn. Bishop f1, all right. Bishop e7 makes sense. Yeah, this is a typical maneuver. We first develop the knight through g6 and then the bishop. Okay, let's see, g3. G3 is actually pretty interesting. G3, yeah, looks pretty good. One idea is to activate the bishop, yeah, potentially put pressure on the long diagonal. And another idea might be to potentially play h5, h4, h5. When your opponent has a knight on g6 or b6, usually the best idea is to run the corner pawns, knight on b6 or g6. And vice versa, if you're black and your opponent has a knight on b3 or g3, you wanna play like a5, a4 or h5, h4, okay? So here, black decided to just castle, makes sense. The only downside of g3 potentially for white is that now he has weakened the f file. Now why is that? Because with a pawn on g2, the knight's guarded, yeah? So we have like a stronghold of a f3 square, the knight is guarded, or let's say potentially we can like move the knight away and then play pawn f3. The f3 pawn will be guarded by the g2 pawn, yeah? So it's like stronger, the f file is stronger. Now this knight is not as well protected, not defended by a knight, by a pawn, I mean. But also if a knight moves, f2 becomes backward. It's a backward pawn. Like if white plays f3, it will no longer be guarded by the g2 pawn. So what does that mean? It means that like black, I guess, should just go like for f6 here, and like put pressure on the f file. Yeah, you see that white has weakened his f file with g3. You wanna play f6 and put pressure, maybe double up rooks potentially, and put pressure on the f file, on the f2 pawn. So let's see. Bishop g2, all right. See, interesting. Exactly like I said, right? Black goes f6, wants to put pressure on the f file. That makes sense. We should always make pawn breaks through our opponent's pawn center. Always make pawn breaks, yeah? Never leave a pawn center unchallenged, all right? Let's see, so white plays d4. This is a bit ironic. But white plays d3 and now we go d4. I'm not so sure about this. See, now suddenly queen b6 makes sense. Suddenly queen b6, ironically enough, makes sense. Yeah, not so sure to play d3 and d4, wasting time. Now already d4 will be a target for us, yeah, for the queen, for the knight. I think white should have just simply just taken. And I guess black. See, ideally, I want to take with a rook and play like rook h8. That'd be ideal. The only problem is there's like bishop g5, yeah? It's like annoying. And I don't want to trade this bishop. Why? Because I have all these pawns of light squares and my dark squares are weak, especially the e5 square. So I don't want to trade this bishop because I want to use this bishop potentially, one, to defend my weak e5 square, and two, to potentially attack the king, white's king. So I want to have more pieces, more dynamics to attack the king. If I want to attack the king, I need more pieces. If I exchange this bishop, I have less attacking resources, plus I will have this weak e5 square. Yeah, when you have pawns on one color, you want to keep your bishop that guards the opposite color, okay? So this is the problem. Bishop g5. So yes, I guess bishop f6 then is the right move. It's true that they can still play maybe bishop g5, but at least I don't need to move my piece, my rook back, yeah? At least I don't lose tempi. So, yeah. But okay, let's see, d4, I think d4 should be a mistake, I guess. Yeah, should be a mistake. Let's see, cd white played. Yeah, cd makes sense, I guess. I mean, this was also interesting. Takes, and let's say they take this way, now we keep this like pawn center. Also, they've been quite interesting. This is potentially weak. Maybe even queen c7 might be a move. Yeah, attacking the e5 pawn. There are also ideas potentially like rook f5, also attacking the pawn. Yeah, and like rook h2 f8, putting pressure on the knight, putting pressure on the f2 pawn. You know, sometimes c4 might become an idea, opening up a queen, putting pressure on f2. After c4, white cannot play really bishop e3 because we just take on b2. And after c4, we also have ideas like bishop c5, constructing this queen bishop boundary and attacking f2. See, there's multiple ideas. So I think fe also would have been quite interesting. But okay, let's see. So black played cd, fixing the weakness on d4, right? Which makes sense. But let's see. Fe, okay. yeah, opening up the rook would make sense as well. And white here play d. Now look at black. Black has very active pieces. The f file, pressure on f2, pressure on b2. This is potentially weak. Black's rooks are connected. The knight cannot really move from f3. White's rooks are pretty useless. Minor pieces undeveloped, queen undeveloped. Black has also a passed pawn. Yeah, things look very, very great for black. Let's see how black played here. Bishop b4, attacking the rook. Not so sure how useful this is. I mean, black can play like, white can play like rook e2, which is useful anyway, because it protects f2, yeah, prophylactically. So I'm not so sure about bishop b4. Looks kind of weird. I was just thinking for a moment about some sacrifice on e5. Well, let's see if it works. Probably doesn't, but let's just check. Knight e5, queen f2. You should always check for these kind of sacrifices, all right? King h1. Let's see, king h1. And I mean, let's say we takes. Yeah, not so sure what next. I mean, yeah, I don't see anything concrete, right? Yeah, no, I think white is fine. And the same goes for this way, yeah? Yeah, I mean, it's just the same. Yeah, white is fine. No, it doesn't work. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't check for sacrifices. First thing you always look at is a sacrifice. Always first check for a sacrifice, okay? Still bishop b4 I don't like. Because one, it's not a stable square, like while just like attack it next move. It has to go back anyway next move. And two, we just help white play rook e2. So instead of that, what else could black play here? Now obviously there's also another sacrificial idea, which like rook f3 takes, and like we take with one of the knights, let's say I don't know, this knight, and we like have a pawn center, maybe play bishop c6 next, and rook f8. After the bishop moves, put pressure on f2. This is also interesting, but I'm not sure if this is like the best, if it's enough compensation. But it's still an interesting idea. I mean, maybe the easiest would be like to play like a move like, I don't know, like rook f7, for example. Yeah, I think it's like very logical. Just double up the rooks and put pressure on the knight and the f2 pawn. I think it's very logical. Something similar would have been like rook f5 maybe. Wanna provoke bishop h3, because e6 is guarded anyway, but then the knight would be weaker without the bishop on g2. And then like rook f8, rook on e5 also pressures the e5 pawn, so maybe rook f5 would have been interesting. There's also ideas, of course, like bishop c5 attacking the f2 pawn. So there's many ideas, but not bishop b4, not bishop b4, just wasting time. Well, let's see, okay. Bishop b4, bishop d2 white chose. Again, rook e2 I think would have been interesting, guarding both the b2 pawn and the e2 pawn. And yeah, and then like white can play like a3, for example. But okay, white play bishop d2, which I'm not so sure about. Okay, black chose to take. Black chose to take. Let's see here. Takes. Knight takes c5, knight takes c5, queen of 2, king h1. No, it doesn't work. Again, I was just looking briefly at this, but doesn't seem to work. Seems to be the same. I was looking at bishop c5 briefly. Double attack on f2 and b2. I think that does make some sense. Because how do we guard both? Right? It's not so clear. And when we attack, usually we don't want to exchange our pieces. Yeah? Because we attack, we need attacking resources. Plus, like I said, we have weak dark squares potentially. So we need our bishop to both attack the king and guard our weak dark squares. So I think bishop c5 would have been, yeah, maybe the best move actually. Maybe the best move. But okay, bishop d2. Queen d2 guarding the pawn, potentially the f2 pawn, yeah. Okay. Queen c7. Now that looks kind of passive, because now I can just play like queen e3, right? Centralizing the queen, guarding the e5 pawn, guarding the b6 square. Not so sure about this move. Again, maybe black should have played simply rook f5, I believe, right? Activating the rook, putting pressure on e5, preparing rook f8, putting pressure on the knight, and potentially the f2 pawn. I think this probably would have been the best. Alternatively, if black didn't have this plan, another logical move would be to play rook c8 and take over the open c file potentially, yeah. So one of these sure, but queen c7 going backwards, not so sure about this. Looks like a mistake. Okay, queen c3 white chose, pinning the knight. I guess that also makes some sense, yeah. Wait, what? And now we just go back? Yeah, that's crazy. Just look at like black's last couple of moves, like black completely lost his initiative. Like this, and trading, and then queen c7, and then queen back to b6. Like clearly black doesn't know what he's doing, right? It's obvious. But again, queen e3, by the way, would have prevented queen b6, right? But okay, let's see. Queen c3, queen b6, queen d2. What is going on? Oh my god. Okay. Finally, black played rook f5. Finally, okay. Rook f5, knight c3. All right, makes sense. Knight e5. So black just decided to take the pawn. Yeah, I'm not sure if I could have defended the pawn. Not sure if he could have defended, because like this is kind of weird. This is not a proper square for the queen. Plus, black can just play like rook f8, right? Putting pressure on the knight. This looks quite bad for white. Putting pressure on the knight, on the f2 potentially. Looks quite risky for white. Plus, there's also ideas like rook c8, right? And with ideas like 95 discovered attack. So, I'm not sure, but white can save this pawn unless with some super precise sequence. But let's see, knight c3. Black decides to take. Yeah, another move I guess would have been, although I was thinking about this, simply like building up a pressure, yeah. The only problem is looking at like knight takes d5, here, check double attack. But maybe we can just go here, and after queen d7, there's a couple ideas. No, I'm not sure if this works, but like rook f3 is interesting, yeah. Although I'm not so sure. Rook f3 here, threatening this pawn. If check, I mean, doesn't really help white. We just go here. Still, this is under pressure. Next, knight takes e5, right? Let's say we go here. We just take here. f3 is weak. We cannot stop knight f3 with triple attack. Black looks completely winning, right? So perhaps rook f8 would have worked. Sometimes it's better like to build up a pressure. But okay, knight e5, I guess, also should work. We'll see. My only concern is like these kind of moves. If white doesn't have like this kind of tactics. But let's see, knight e5 takes. Takes. Okay. Now what is this? How can you play such a move? This makes absolutely zero sense. I mean, what? I guess white's idea was to, he wanna play like king h1 and then like f4, and like he can't play king h1 because like he was afraid of like rook f2. That's why he goes like, but he's like so passive. He's like so passive. I was thinking about like sacrifices, but I mean it doesn't work, I guess, yeah, because you go like bishop e6, and it's, I guess, doesn't work. But still, white should have played something more active. I don't know, any move, but that's more active. This just looks so passive. But I guess black just has big initiative here, and black has so many threats here. Rook f8 next, attacking the f2 pawn, knight g4 potentially attacking the f2 pawn, knight c4 attacking the queen and the b2 pawn. Yeah, looks very good for black. Looks very good for black, yeah. But okay, let's see. So rook f1, super passive move. Rook f8 makes sense. I mean, another move would have been knight c4, attacking the queen, attacking b2, also would have been fine. But yeah, rook f8 makes sense. b3, preventing knight c4. All right. Rook f3, yeah, that's funny. If white takes, we take the bishop double attack the king and the queen. But I mean, white's not obliged to take. So not so sure about this move. If it's the best, not so sure about it. Maybe, I mean, knight g4 looks very logical to me. What about knight g4? How do they guard? I mean, what knight? Well, that's passive. Plus, we can just play like bishop b5, attack the rook. Rook moves, we just take. Takes. Game over. Queen moves, and it's like, let's say queen moves somewhere. Checkmate. Double check from the queen and the rook. Right? It's just completely winning. So I think like knight g4. Yeah, actually, how do they play? If we make some random, I mean, we just take. Takes again. It's the same. It's game over. So yeah, knight g4 actually looked completely winning. Yeah, knight g4 I think was winning on the spot. Yeah, so rook f3 I think is a mistake, but okay. Knight e4. No, I'm not so sure about this. Okay, bishop takes, pawn takes, makes sense. Knight c4. All right. Attacking the queen, queen e2. You see, black lost a little bit of his attack, of his initiative, right? But still, let's see, material-wise, one has what? 5 pawns. We're up a pawn. We have a strong knight. The bishop is limited by our d5 pawn. We have a f-file pressure on f2, active pieces, active heavy pieces, right? Yeah, should be advantage, clear advantage for black. But still, black could have been basically completely winning after knight g4 a couple of moves ago. But okay, let's see. So rook b1. Okay. I just briefly looking at like rook f2. With the idea that if rook f2 then queen b1, yeah, and we just won a pawn. And then like if rook b6, then we go like here. But then the problem is maybe we can like take rook b7. We have like knight e3, and we can take the h2 pawn, but and we have two passers, so yes, should be completely winning still. But maybe we don't want to give up a b7 pawn. Well, again, still looks very good, I guess. And if queen f2, then rook f2, rook b6, rook f1, yeah. And then we like just take like this or like this, probably with a knight. And yeah, should be winning. Yeah, so rook f2 actually, I guess, would have been interesting, unless we're missing something, but I think should be fine for black. But okay, queen a6 looks kind of weird to put the queen like this, but I guess it attacks the pawn, and the queen on e2 is loose, so might be potentially some tactics. Okay, queen a6, rook b4. So black just want to like trade the queens. Yeah, not too sure about this. Like this whole sequence looks a bit weird. A bit weird. Maybe queen c7 would have been like more natural, or queen c6 or queen c7, right? Still guarding the b7 pawn. But yeah, queen a6 and like knight b6, allowing white to double up our pawns. I mean, why? Yeah, this looks weird. I think more sense would have made maybe a move like maybe like b6 and then queen a5, maybe like b6, and I want to put like my queen on c5. But I don't want to lose my b7 pawn, right? So that's why b6, put my pawns of opposite color than his bishop. Yeah, and then queen a5, queen c5, putting pressure on f2. I think c5 is like a great square, or d6, you know, because it supports e5, it defends the e6 pawn. Like I want to centralize my queen, yeah. But yeah, queen knight b6, why double up my pawns? I think this is probably a mistake. I need my queen to attack white's king, right? It's more difficult to win without the queen's less attacking resources. So yeah, I'm not so sure about it. This looks strong. He decided not to take. I think queen a6 would have been interesting. Now, I'm not saying this is like already fine for white. Probably white is still worse, I guess. It's still worse, should be. But white can play like a move like, let's say, f4, you know, and like liberate his rook, and like e5 is weak, and now it's like not so easy to push our pawns. See, we cannot really push because they'll just take on e5. So f4 is a good move because it like stops our pawns, and yeah, it's quite difficult to win this. Quite difficult to win. And e6 is potentially weak, a6 potentially weak. It has a good bishop potentially, yeah. So yeah, I think white should have taken and then play like f4 maybe. But okay, queen b2, knight a4. Okay. Here makes sense. Now black is what, up for 2 pawns? I mean, oh my god, what is this? Oh my god. Okay, yeah, clearly this is a mistake, queen b2. But white is much worse already anyway, whatever we do. But probably should have played like queen e3, putting pressure here, centralizing the queen. White is of course much worse. Black can play a move like, let's say, like this, and like b6. It's completely winning. But still, at least like they keep the rook. Okay, knight d3, here, takes, okay. Yeah, black is just, I mean, just collective pawns. f4, a tad too late, but okay, queen a6. Now, of course, black just want to play queen b6, simplify when you're winning materially, or even like positionally or materially. You want to simplify the game, especially like materially. Yeah, less pieces on the board, less craziness, easier to convert. Okay, but let's see, rook e1. Yeah, I mean, should have played king h1, but I mean, black is winning anyway. But still, king h1 was a better move. Queen b6, and white resigned. Yeah, black is completely winning. Yeah, I hope this was instructive. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.